Do you think I've come to bring peace? I come to bring division. I don't know about you, but those are very unwelcome words in this particular time in which we are living in America. I don't want to hear that Jesus is not bringing me peace, and I certainly don't want to hear that we are going to have endless and ongoing division. So fortunately, Matthew has a similar statement of Jesus. Jesus says, "Do you think I'm going to bring peace on earth? No, I bring you a sword." The sword, obviously, is for us to fight against evil, to fight against injustice, and all of those things that we know are part and parcel of being a Christian in the world. And so I like Matthew's approach much better, because I think the sword is something positive, but we live in a time in which division is sadly not something that there is anything positive about in our culture. And Jesus talks about it in both Gospels, Matthew and Luke, as division of the most basic kind, division within families. And much as which that may be shocking for us, it was even more shocking in his culture, because for Jews in the first century and for Romans in the first century, family was everything. And to have those kinds of division in family was really a very sad reality. But Jesus is saying to us, yes, sometimes in being a good Christian in the world, we will alienate people, even our own neighbors and the members of our own family. But hopefully with dialogue, we do not alienate them forever. And that's why I find the Gospel of Luke much less satisfactory. If we read it just at face value, it almost sounds as if Jesus is suggesting, well, your consolation for not having my peace is having division. We are sadly divided in this world and in this country in a way that, at least in my 78 years, I have never seen such sharp division. We are divided racially on the basis of old prejudices and hatred and a long history of injustices. Those divisions, I thought for a time, were getting better. And certainly there have been strides in civil rights and in other ways, but it is painfully obvious that we live in a time in which those kinds of prejudice, those racial divisions, still divide us. I see nothing positive in that kind of division. We live in a world in which we are, sadly, also divided on socioeconomic basis. This also is predicated on a long history of unequal opportunity and the grinding realities of the secular nature of poverty, and on a whole host of other economic realities that are hard to minimize their importance or to suggest that there's some kind of simple way to get our way out. But it is sobering that statisticians tell us we are again living in a time where the disparity between the wealth of the wealthiest and the rest of us, and particularly of the poor, is remarkably a huge gulf, similar to what it was like in the 1920s before the enactment of graduated income tax. This is sobering, and there is nothing positive about this division. And we are also divided politically in ways that I have never seen before in my life. Ways that are really destructive and counterproductive. We live in a democracy, or at least we proclaim we live in a democracy. I wonder these days whether we still have a democracy, because in a proper working democracy, people get together. They discuss their differences, and through discussion come to a better understanding of the other person's point of view and are enabled thereby to make compromises. But we live in a culture in which our politicians no longer get together. Oh, they get together with people who are like-minded, but they don't get together with each other. They don't discuss over political divide. There's always been political divide in this country and every country. But the difference today is that over that divide, I don't hear much dialogue. In a well-working democracy, people meet together and discuss. And in the dialogue, they come to some better understanding, at least of the other person's point of view and why they're holding that view. And out of that work, and it is work to get together with people who we don't agree with, out of that work can come compromise. But especially in our national government, we see complete gridlock because people don't get together. Even within committees, various topics are not discussed because the leaders cannot agree to bring those to the floor to allow discussion. And even if something should pass out of a committee, it almost always gets deadlocked in the House or the Senate because the persons who are in charge of allowing legislation to come forward have decided that there's no way they're going to allow that topic to be discussed. And there are various reasons that they give for why this is true, but this has resulted in complete gridlock. This is very dangerous to democracy, and it is particularly dangerous in a country like ours. Is it fair to say that we still live in a democracy, or are we ever reaching closer to an autocracy? In any event, ideally, people get together when they have divisions. They discuss these. We see this perhaps best illustrated in good marriages. There isn't a solid marriage in which there are serious, and I mean serious, disagreements. Sometimes these are disagreements that are heated. But if a married couple love each other sufficiently, they sit down and they talk about it. And they try to understand where the other person is coming. And out of that comes a possibility for compromise, and often compromise is possible. And sometimes they have to simply agree to disagree, but when they agree to disagree, they do it in an atmosphere in which they have decided that they can move on and live on despite the disagreement. But that isn't happening much in our culture. It's happening almost nowhere, in fact, in our culture. Instead, the other side is demonized, and slanderous things are said, and all kinds of things are said to increase the heat and to also increase the division. It's a very sad situation, and clearly it is not the Lord's plan that we should experience these kinds of division. It's interesting that Luke begins this passage by saying, Jesus saying, that he has come to bring fire on the earth. Now, fire is essentially a good thing. It gives light, but it also refines. And it's that which I think he has in mind when he talks about division. We need more light in our conversations, and we also need more refinement in our conversations in all kinds of ways. Christians are called to cooperate with one another, to understand and recognize and proclaim that we are all loved children of God, regardless of our particular political perspectives or our racial background or our socioeconomics. We are all in this together, and we are called to be brothers and sisters. We are called to dialogue. And sadly, in our age, what we basically hear is monologue and demonizing and a whole host of things that simply complicate this problem. So where does the peace of Jesus fit into any of this? Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace comes when we have taken up that sword and done everything we possibly could do to stand up for what is right. Peace comes when we have defended the rights of others, particularly those whose rights are under persecution. Peace comes when we have spoken our mind but have been open to allowing others to speak their mind also and our enfolding them in their love. Then we experience a peace that in one of our prayers is referred to as the peace that passes understanding, because it isn't logical. It's not peace that means the cessation of all bad feelings or of conflict. It is a deeper peace that comes as the result of resolution. Peace comes when we enfold our neighbor and give up our grudges and our anger and our fury with them and welcome them as members of our family. That's kind of what we call peace of mind. And that's the kind of peace that Jesus does bequeath. So as we think about our divisions, we should also have our mind and our eyes on the prize, which is the peace of God. Taking that sword and using it to cleave through all the ridiculousness of our age to the heart of what is important, and using it to battle for those who are in need of our help and to battle for justice. And then to sit back after we have done all we can do, committing the rest into God's care, who will then give us peace. Amen.